Mental strength in life. The most important factor for a fulfilling life, for achieving success, or simply for being loved by others, I believe is mental strength. Mental strength, I'd temporarily define it as the inner power of the mind. I'm just giving it a temporary definition because it's a matter of timing. Maybe in a while, when I'm less deluded, I'll be able to use a more precise definition. Hello, my little eager learners. You may not know this, but I really enjoy playing survival games like PUBG. Of course, I'm talking about the early days when the game was purely about survival with a billion difficult challenges for players. Fight or run, fight with another team or get into the safe zone, wait for a better opportunity. I often say life is like a game, and it will throw countless challenges at you with a billion different levels of difficulty, just like a game. The only difference is that a game gives you a chance to start over, but life doesn't. You only have one life, and mental strength will be the deciding factor in whether you dare to play or run away. Hearing this, you might think, that's easy, my spirit is stable. Nonsense. That's when you don't see what you have to do or not do. But only an enlightened person can reach this level. For example, if you feel chill in the morning and miserable in the afternoon, you're not okay at all, my friend. Think about it, it's true. It's either you don't see the problem or your ability to recognize it is low, but the problem is still there. An old house is pitch dark with a thief hiding inside. It's too dark for the owner to see the thief. Not seeing the thief doesn't mean there is no thief. The thief is still hiding there. The owner just isn't aware of it. Or in other words, you don't recognize the consequences of the problem. Therefore, to you, the problem doesn't exist or isn't a concern. The house has a thief, but you don't know it, so that thief means nothing to you. You just chill, but when you find out, you complain and curse your fate. That's right. If you think your life is peaceful, there are a few possibilities. Life hasn't put you through the ringer yet. Life has, but others have dealt with it for you, maybe family or relatives. Your subconscious has been avoiding accepting and confronting life's challenges all this time, which I've talked about a lot. No matter how much you run, life will still make you learn its lessons. The only difference is whether you want to do it willingly or by force. Mental strength requires two things. First, recognizing the problem correctly, and second, completing the goal at all costs. The first one looks simple at a glance, but it's not simple at all. Because awareness is something you cannot evaluate yourself. For example, whether you should do something or not, whether you should text your crush, or whether you should study that major. There are countless issues like that where you need proper awareness to make the right choices and actions. Doing it isn't hard. Understanding it is. Mental strength is an extremely powerful thing, and with that power, it can create extraordinary things, but it can also create disastrous failures. So you have to be aware of the problem before committing your mind to any task. You don't need to try to develop yourself, but that's only when you don't expect anything from this life and accept the results of a mediocre life. If you like lying around playing games and eating snacks, you have to be happy when you're looked down upon and not cry when you become obese and can't breathe. Trust me, being fat and out of breath is very unpleasant. But if you want good things, you have to accept trading this for that, whatever it takes, as long as you can handle the heat. Completing goals and ethics. This matter of completing goals is extremely important, something most of us don't get to experience. There are a few reasons. We grew up in an educational environment that values appearances, so you don't actually need to complete the goal. Just pretending you did is considered a success. We were pampered, with no one to impose a goal to complete. This is often due to a lack of proper upbringing. Having parents doesn't mean you've been well raised. These are two completely unrelated things. If there isn't a person with enough discernment to check and evaluate your abilities, it's very easy for you to do things half-heartedly. The elders have a saying that you live a virtuous life for your children. The more virtuous an elder, the easier it is for them to spot the flaws in their descendants to correct them. Why do we have to complete goals? It's to stay away from the temptation of quitting halfway, being careless, betraying trust, breaking promises, not honoring your word, or cheating and being lazy. These are all things that drag our lives down to the bottom. Mental strength is also connected to our ethics. We haven't done bad things not because we're good people, but because we don't have the ability or the opportunity to do them. For example, I'm not so greedy as to use poor quality ingredients, not because I'm a good person, but because the market management department visits often. And even if they didn't visit as much, the extra profit from using poor quality ingredients is only 10%, so I don't trade. However, it's not certain that a 50% profit wouldn't tempt me. Your mental strength, whether it is strong or weak, will determine your ability to resist the temptations of life. Be yourself. Be yourself. This phrase from Western culture isn't wrong, but if you misunderstand it, your life will get messed up. Self here can be understood as the ego. The important thing is how much we understand our ego, what is good and what is rude inside that ego. The ego has both a good side and an arrogant side. The arrogant side is the hidden parts, the bad traits, the evil thoughts. The good side is the opposite, and they coexist with different proportions, but only one is dominant. A good person is someone whose good side is dominant. However, the arrogant side still exists and is not completely eliminated, but it will have very little chance to rise if that person knows how to introspect their mind. So when you hear the phrase, be yourself, you should understand it correctly as, be your good self. Is there any sane person who tells people to be rude? And there's no one with an above average IQ who would be happy with that. But the trouble is that many people get misled by that Western individualism. They think it's so cool that I have to be me. Damn, that's so cool. But they expect others to endure their rudeness. It's like when you have a partner and they say, that's just the way I am. If you love me, you have to accept it. If you can't, then leave. Sound familiar? Everyone has the right to choose their own path. What you want to become is your right. If you live alone in a cave, not caring about the world, then you can be yourself however you want. But when you are in a community, you have to choose which part of your ego to let dominate in order to harmonize with that community. It's like when you get married, whether you are a CEO or a motorbike taxi driver, the Constitution still dictates that you are only allowed one wife and one husband. If you want more, move to another territory or create your own country and laws. Everyone has a right to choose. Just as I have my freedom, I must respect the freedom of others. So in my opinion, we need to add another idea. Be yourself, but also don't bother others. Western people have a very high sense of individualism. For those who remember the COVID outbreak, in places like France, the government could not force anyone to wear a mask because that was a matter of human rights and freedom. But because of this freedom, there were some places that put up signs at the entrance that said, you have the right not to wear a mask, but I have the right to sick my dogs on those who don't. Do you see? Your freedom must be balanced with the community if you still want to live and make a living in that community. Everyone has their rights. But if everyone takes their cars out on the road and each person wants to be themselves at any speed in any lane or even on one or two wheels because it's their right, there will surely be collisions. And that's why there need to be clear rules so that no one infringes on anyone else's rights. You have freedom, but it must be based on the community's shared freedom. That is the law of life. If you want to master your life, you first have to create your own life's rules. If you want to be yourself, you should understand it as be your good self. But if you want to be your arrogant self, your backing has to be as strong as a fortress. It's like me, a manufacturer. I have a few very rude partners, but because their prestige and connections are so great and their output is so large, I have to listen to whatever they demand. It's survival. I need money to raise my children. So if you want to be yourself, even your arrogant self, you at least have to be so exceptionally good that others will tolerate you and rein in their own egos to give way to you. But if you are the arrogant self and worthless, they will shove a whole basket of corn cobs down your throat immediately. Western people worship individualism, while we worship respect for teachers and morality, listening to our parents, and if we're not well behaved, we get beaten with a stick. In reality, if we could combine both, that would be ideal. But you have to be able to analyze the good and bad in both parts of the ego to observe for yourself and see which part is dominant so you can harmonize with the community you've chosen. For me personally, only the good self can truly feel genuine happiness, so I should nourish my good self and try to harmonize with those around me. If you want others to follow your will, even when you are very rude, you have to be extremely outstanding first. But you also need to remember that no matter how outstanding you are, you still have to bow down because you can't live alone. The market will still be crowded without you. While your face is as arrogant as a dike, you're already standing at the edge of an abyss without even knowing it. Money and true happiness. What do you really want in this life? Once in college, my lecturer asked me this question. I answered immediately without a moment's thought. 1,000 billion, even better if it's in gold or dollars. I don't have to work. I don't have to rely on a single ferry to cross the river. With that much, I just need to invest and enjoy life, healthy as a bull. That's all I need. The lecturer asked many people the same question, and the majority answered similarly, only differing in the amount of money. From this, it can be seen that the dream of having a lot of money is not unique to anyone. The pursuit of happiness is always the ultimate goal of human life. No one lives without wanting to be happy. So, our subconscious has clearly and automatically linked money with happiness. Try to argue with a kid about a few thousand dong and see how unhappy they get. The more money, the happier you will be. That's also how society operates. Money is always the measure for everything. But is that really true? Once, after entertaining a guest, I fed my dog some sweet soup, went home and lay down, thinking about that 1,000 billion. I put myself in different scenarios to see what I truly wanted in my heart. If I had 1,000 billion, but had to live in prison, which would I choose? Of course, I'd choose freedom, because what good is 1,000 billion in prison? It's better to be free and broke than to have a billion and lose your freedom. Then I pondered again. What if I was put in a place with a fully furnished villa, a supercar, luxurious food, and amenities that were the envy of royalty? But in exchange, there was no one else there but me. Would I stay? Hell no. I'd rather be in a place with people, a community, a society, and interactions. I'd even live in a slum rather than have all the luxury but no one else. Then all that material stuff would be meaningless. By now you'll see that between money and freedom, everyone will choose freedom. Between money and loneliness versus having less money but social interaction, everyone will choose less money with people around. If you play a game without a community, isn't that a dead game? A villa only makes you happy when others see it and admire it. If no one notices, no matter how luxurious and fancy it is, you'll get bored of it very quickly. To put it another way, you build a villa not just to live in it, but to buy the attention of others. We desire to achieve something simply because the whole of society desires the same thing. We desire to have a lot of money because that society also desires it and uses it as a measure of being rich and wealthy. This leads to so many egos accepting humiliation to have a lot of money, not shying away from the most barbaric methods. It becomes karma, and that karmic force follows you into a new life from which you cannot escape. If society no longer values something, you will automatically abandon the desire for it. But the problem is that society will never stop desiring, and you will not have an escape, or you haven't found one yet. Society will always desire, and you will always be sucked into it like quicksand. Maybe you haven't realized it yet, but by the time you do, you're already submerged. Let's go back to the original question. So is money, or things that can be converted into money, what we desire most? Clearly not. Money is just a tool for us to buy the attention, to buy the admiration of others. If you are full of money but no one knows who you are, no one cares about you, this ego will not be satisfied. As long as the ego exists, it will always push you to seek recognition from other egos, because that is the energy for your inner ego to exist. Then that energy accumulates, becoming stronger and stronger, and drags you into life's whirlpools. One life after another, one reincarnation after another, sinking and floating in that cycle. Therefore, the hardest thing in this life is not trying to become someone and have a lot of money, but not to become anyone at all. Because when the ego still exists, it always desires recognition. Everything only stops when the ego dissolves. That is the highest freedom, where there are no more desires, and you will feel that this life is truly not suffering at all. Suffering and bliss. When I was first with my master, it was a major spiritual ceremony. Many devotees came, and during the conversation, one person cried to my master, "Master, my life has been so difficult in every way. Now I have nothing left, not even my wife, children, or family. Life is truly a sea of suffering, Master." My master just laughed and said, "Life is a sea of bliss." Everyone's eyes widened because they had only ever heard, "Life is a sea of suffering." The person then asked, "How can suffering be bliss, Master?" My master just laughed and said, "Suffering is a blessing." It truly sounded questionable, because in this human realm, people race to practice to eliminate suffering, escape reincarnation, and enter nirvana. Yet my master said that. But now when I reflect, I see that he was right. Life is a sea of bliss, because in my mind, suffering is no longer so great. Sometimes when I recall the past suffering, I say to myself, why did I make myself suffer so much back then? And I silently thank those sufferings, because they help me understand myself better, become more resilient, more patient, and live more comfortably. The more you suffer, the more bliss you feel. The more you suffer, the easier it is to return to yourself. The more you suffer, the more you are willing to let go of the idea that everything must go your way. And the more you suffer, the more your ego becomes clear-headed and accepts bowing down to the perfection of the universe. No one can control anything. We just see, learn, and then walk out of this human realm comfortably. If you say that suffering is a gift from the universe now, many people wouldn't want to receive it at all. But if you are calm enough to recall the suffering you've been through, isn't it true that after each one, it helped you become more clear-headed and unlocked a new quality of consciousness? Yeah, I guess so. It's like the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. You have to feel pain to become wiser and more human. No one looks for lotuses on a concrete road, because lotuses only bloom from muddy ponds. You are looking for happiness where there is no suffering, which is ignorance, because going through suffering is the only way you can recognize your happiness. So should you be afraid of suffering? No. Just embrace all the lessons the universe sends you, learn from them, and transform them, rather than trying to escape them. Understanding life and being able to harmonize with both the suffering and bliss it brings is called enlightenment. As for those who claim to be enlightened but are still confused, negative, and judgmental in the outside world, they are probably just in a state of delusion or have only touched the surface. So saying life is a sea of suffering is not wrong, and saying life is a sea of bliss is also right. Suffering is also bliss. Suffering will lead you to a state of peace that no longer depends on any external factors. The operating principle. If humans lived in an ideal environment without suffering or pressure, they would naturally turn to bad ways. Look at the newly rich. Most of the children in those families have one bad habit or another, or even both, or even more. The more favorable the environment, the more easily human character declines if there isn't proper family education. I talked about this in my video on overcoming bliss. For those who are good at history, you'll see that it's rare for us to live in prolonged peace. After a period of stability, there will be conflict and war. Of course, war has many different forms and types. Many powerful dynasties that had never been seen before also collapsed quickly. That's why in this human realm, we will never be able to come together peacefully to reach a great utopian world. There is only one thing that helps us live peacefully: letting go of attachments. Letting go is not about giving up or shutting down, but about knowing the laws of life, understanding the laws of the universe. Every time you suffer, just tell yourself that you are probably thinking and acting against the common operating principle and change your awareness and behavior. That's how you master your life. The more abundant and peaceful things are, the more apathetic generations are born. Conversely, the more destitute and painful things are, the more great people emerge. Chaos gives birth to heroes. When I was little and watched the circus, I saw that to train an animal, the trainer had to starve it. If it did well, they would reward it with food. That's how the animal became obedient. Even the universe is like that. To educate us, the universe also gives us suffering. If we overcome it, we are given bliss and then more suffering, unless you know how to overcome bliss or understand the law of formation, existence, decay, annihilation. And only then can you maintain a long-term state of bliss. Have you noticed that recently, search results have shown a lot of concepts like awakening, enlightenment, meditation, core energy, and cosmic frequencies? This applies to everyone from the newly rich to the destitute, university students to thugs. I think that need is natural, and it's at its peak because material things have become so abundant. Food and clothing are no longer what people are too concerned about. In a nutshell, we've eaten our fill, we're tired of playing, the outside world is no longer fascinating, so we want to turn inward to find the core meaning of life. It sounds so grand and profound, but it's not necessarily profound, and it can be as sharp as a knife's edge. Because as soon as you tell yourself, wow, I'm enlightened, so this is what the universe meant. This world is so dirty, someone as understanding as me must clean it up. The moment you are spiritually self-gratifying, your ego gets bigger, much bigger, and it doesn't disappear here as you delude yourself into believing. And this is when you start to mess up. You think you've eliminated the ego, but it only gets stronger and puts you into a state of delusion where you are blissful and say, oh yeah. And because you are in this state of delusion and not truly observing and focusing your mind to understand your inner nature, your ego has developed a very depraved aspect. It wants to be the center of the universe. What I say, the elders must listen. When I threaten, children must be scared. It's like, in this end of days era, luckily I am here, so wise. This life is full of suffering. Let me help those who are still ignorant. It's true, because the world you see when you turn inward is only for you to observe and let go. And the world you see when you turn outward is already perfectly complete. You have no function and no power to change it. Be less deluded and immediately abandon the idea of changing anyone. Instead, learn to accept so that karma can be carried out as it was always meant to be. I'm not telling you to do nothing. I just hope you understand that you shouldn't think you are special or overrate what you do. When you feel important, it's actually just a delusion of the ego.